Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we're finally recording a Sunday Victory Pod episode. USC takes care of Nebraska in the Coliseum, 28-20. Obviously, a lot to dive into. Definitely want to get your thoughts on Jayden Maiava's first start as quarterback. But overall, Cody, what are you thinking 24 hours after this win for the Trojans?
Yeah, it's great to get back into the win column. A lot of positives in this football game. Obviously, some areas that we need to work on, and we'll talk about that throughout this episode. Loved how balanced we were on the offensive side of the football. I thought the defense played phenomenal for the majority of that football game, even when the offense put them in some bad positions. So that was very encouraging to see. But overall, we'll talk about this game and break it down. But with that being said, you know what week it is. And I don't want to get too far ahead and look past this game, although it is UCLA week. And then after that, it is Notre Dame week. So after we break down this episode and talk about this win for USC, I'm putting the blinders on. I'm a former player, so you know how I get on these weeks, Keely, and I'm
I
sure
do.
our preview episode this week will be very intense. But like I said, this is great momentum going into these last two games, into these last two rivalry games. It was great to see some things that needed to be fixed in this game. That's what the bye week's for. We got some guys healthy, got them back for this game, so that was awesome. But overall, we'll talk about this after that. We're turning the page, we're putting it behind us, and we're on to two rivalry games coming up. But either way, excited to talk about this one first. Again, another victory podcast episode. I always enjoy these ones a little bit more.
For sure. It's definitely fun to dive into it. And we got a lot of questions, Cody. And speaking of, just a couple of reminders before we dive into it. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box, either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are Victory Pod USC. You can also send us a text. If you're an audio listener, it's in the description of each episode. It'll open up your messaging app, and that's how you can get a hold of us as well. And also, I mentioned this in the preview podcast, and it still applies for this episode. There's a blood donation competition happening among Big Ten schools, and a 1 million prize is on the line. I wish it was 100 million, Cody.
Whoa. Yeah.
If you bleed Cardinal and Gold, donate blood and submit for the USC Trojans at big10.org/Abbott before December 7th. And I believe that's motivated because we are in the biggest blood shortage that we've had in the U.S. in like the last 20 years. So they're trying to get some competition in there to get people motivated, but definitely a great cause to get competitive about if you quote unquote bleed Cardinal and Gold. Alrighty, Cody, let's jump into the offense. Now, I'm actually going to give some behind the scenes because after the Trojan Tailgate show, you come and watch like the first quarter with me down on the sideline. And this was quite the game to have your commentary, Cody, because it was really fun to see you react to Jayden Maiava's first start and that first series, that first quarter, really, because you were so expressive as you are as a former USC quarterback, but I got to kind of get an insight into Jayden's mind as he's having his first start. And first up, you really like that first like kind of toss pitch play that Lincoln Riley lined up for Maiava, just because it kind of got his brain moving a little bit, right? Like kind of got the nerves off of him.
Well, and that was kind of the first thing I said is I love that first play. And I was adamant about that because as a quarterback, making your first start as a sophomore, as a young player, it's so important to get that first completion. And what better way to do it? And also getting Zachariah Branch involved. But what better way to do it to get it to one of your best playmakers on offense, get a little touch pass. I know people complain about, and Jordan gave me a hard time on the Trojan Tailgate show when Adoree came on the episode because we talked about that Nebraska game when we played in the Holiday Bowl. But I threw a 1-yard pass to Adoree and he went for 70-yard touchdown, right? So those go towards the quarterback stats as well. But I say all that to say it's nice to be able to have that little touch pass to get things going. Now you're 1 for 1, have a completion, a 6 or 7-yard gain. You've got Zachariah Branch already involved early on, one of our better playmakers on this offense. So I love that. But outside of that first play, and we'll talk about this a little bit more too when we get to Lincoln Riley's play calling, but that play was important at the time too, because he ran so many different variants of play calls off of that. And that was the first thing Nebraska saw in that game. And these are the games within a game. This is where I start nerding out on you, but I won't get there yet, and I won't get too far ahead. But let's talk about Jayden first. I outside of that first play, I thought it was a very slow start for him, right? He struggled a little bit early on to get into a rhythm, which is expected. You could tell the nerves were there a little bit, kind of forcing some throws, wasn't very accurate with his down the field shots. Love that he was taking shots down the field, but wasn't very accurate on hitting them. Had one overthrow, then he underthrew one a little bit. But those are important, I think, because when you make some mistakes early on, it kind of settles you into the football game, right? And he had the biggest mistake you can make as a quarterback, which is a pick six. And I remember right when that happened, I turned to you, Jordan walked over as well. And the first thing I said was what? I said, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
And you guys kind of looked at me confused a little bit.
See, but I know your thought process. Jordan didn't. He was like, looked at you if you're out of your mind, but this is
Ye
what I'm talking about. It was fascinating getting your perspective on what was happening because, and your mom had a question about it too, but you kind of heard the groans in the stadium a little bit, like, here we
yeah.
go again. And you were the sole positive voice going, no, 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 this is good. This is like a weight off of his shoulders almost, right?
Yeah, it really is, and now obviously I don't want that to happen. We don't want
Sure.
a pick six. I would have been just fine with an interception. Didn't need to be going back for a touchdown as well. But making a mistake early on when there's that much pressure, when there's so much, it's been 2 weeks. You think about it. He's known this that he's going to be a starter for 2 weeks. There's so much build up to this football game that when it happens, your emotions are at an all time high, and you've got to be able to level that out. Whether it's a big play, whether it's a bad play, whatever happens, you've got to be able to settle into the football game. Like I said, don't love that it came in the form of a pick six, but I'm happy it happened because after that play, you could really see when he went to the sideline and as a quarterback making your first start or you're a younger player at home, a ton of expectations, right? They're not saying he's going to be the savior. We're 4-5 now, 5-5. It's not like he's coming in there and it's a Sam Darnold type situation where he's going to lead us to the Rose Bowl, right? There's only 3 games left in the season, but for him, there is a lot of pressure on that game because you want to be able to go out there and perform well and show that you can be or potentially be the quarterback of the future here at USC. So there is a lot of pressure. But once that happened, like I said, I remember looking at you guys and saying, I'm glad that that happened because now he's ready. Now he's settled in. And the stats back that up, right? At that point in the game, after that interception on that following drive, Jayden was 3 for 8 for 9 yards and an interception. From that point on, after that happened, he went 22 of 27, which is 81% passing, 3 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. That is huge for multiple reasons. A, because it backs up what I said. And I told you guys wanting to settle in so I can toot my own horn a little bit and say I'm right. Where there's some
Sure.
risky throws, yeah, I'll talk about the negatives in a second. But after that, the biggest thing and most importantly for me is that we're going to learn a lot about how he can handle adversity. That was worst case scenario. Throwing a pick six. Also, it was to Sierra Wright, who's a former Trojan. So there's a little bit more added on that. I know Jayden didn't play with Sierra a year ago, but everyone in the stadium and the Coliseum felt that a little bit. The sidelines were like, yeah, that was Sierra. He was excited. It takes the wind out of the stadium. It takes the wind out of the excitement for your first start. But I wanted to see how he was going to respond, right? So it was a two-parter for me, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. Like I said, to go 81% after that, because he could have went in the tank. It could have
Yeah.
been that happened. Now what? I haven't been in this position a ton. I'm a younger player. I only played a year ago as a freshman in the Mountain West. Now I'm getting thrown against one of the best defenses in the entire country in the Big Ten Conference, and now I have to go out there and perform. So it could have went downhill after that moment, but like I said, I
Yeah.
was just so excited to see him bounce back from that. That's huge to see from a young player, especially in his development in the future. Now, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about I want to say the negatives, but areas for improvement, things that were concerning in this football game. And I think it's going to get better with his development under Lincoln Riley. I truly believe that. But he needs to understand when to throw the ball away, when to just go down with the football, when not to, there's times to be Superman, there's times to take your cape off, right? And I know this is going to sound like a little bit of a flashback here talking about Caleb Williams from a year
I was
ago.
about to say this is
And
like the last two
because
years.
it's such a fine line when you have a playmaker like, Jayden Maiava and Caleb Williams, guys like, and I'm not putting Jayden in Caleb's category. Absolutely not. I'll make that clear. Jayden has a long way to go to get to that area to be, to have that type of success. But when you have someone that's capable of making those big plays every single time he has the football in his hands, you have to be able to weather that a little bit. You have to be able to retain it, to bring it in, to reel it in at times and know when to be Superman and know when to be Clark Kent, right? And know that it's okay to throw it away. It's okay instead of trying to force a throw, instead of trying to make the hero play every time, to just take a check down. To, like I said, throw it away, burn one at their feet if it's not there. Take a sack. I'm okay with that. I don't want my quarterback taking hits, but take a sack instead of trying to just, to do some things extra. But like I said, that'll come with his development. There were times that I felt like he was throwing some of those 50-50 throws that could have gone either way that he didn't need to. But there were also times where it's, that experiment or that experience where you're going, no, 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 no. And then it happens and you're like, okay, great. Yes.
Yeah.
So then you're excited. So you don't want to handcuff him. You don't want to take that ability away from him to make those big time plays. He's just got to learn in his development and his experience going forward. And I know Lincoln Riley is one of the best in the country. He's going to help him do this, but to know when to be smarter with the football, not to put our team in a bad situation. And the biggest example of that, and it could have been a turning point, and we'll talk about the defense in a little bit, why I think they played so well. But that fumble in the third quarter, the
Yeah.
interception for me, that was not a game breaker. And that was that. And take it a step further too on that. And I know he'll be the first one to say it, but Kyle Ford on that interception play had a gump route, like we talk about, a runoff route where you're supposed to clear the corner out. He got a little lazy on his route, slowed up a little bit, looked back at the quarterback. So he put Jayden already in a bad situation. So that interception, you can break down a couple different ways and say, okay, that happened. Was it a bad throw? Sure. Was it a bad decision? Yes. Did the receiver hurt you a little bit on the outside? Absolutely. We can live with that. But that fumble in the third quarter when we have the lead, and it felt like, again, whether it's Miller, whether it's Jayden, anybody on offense, that, here we go again.
Yeah.
We have the lead in the second half. We have a costly turnover. This one deep in our own territory that could have, really dictated the outcome of this game. Those are ones that can't happen. He can't let that happen. That, he made a great move to get outside the pocket, avoided the rush. Then you have a defender in your face. That's what I talk about, Superman or Clark Kent. Be Clark Kent right there. Throw it out of bounds. Throw it to Lincoln Riley, who's standing right next to you on the sideline. Throw it to your teammate. Throw it out of bounds. Throw it to Gavin. Let someone on the sideline catch it real quick. We go to the next play, right? And if we have to punt and we can't figure it out and we can't get it done, flip the field. We move on. But you can't make some of those bad plays worse in those situations when you're trying to do too much. But overall, the potential is there. I think anyone that watched this game can see that his ceiling is very, very high in Lincoln Riley's offense. He has a very strong arm, an NFL level arm. He threw a comeback to Kyle Ford, I think, in right before halftime or somewhere in the second quarter when he was falling away a little bit from the opposite hash, and that ball was on a frozen rope. I always tell my young quarterbacks when I used to train quarterbacks that we're not throwing it to a receiver, we're throwing it through a receiver. I don't want that football dying as it gets there. He threw an out route to Kyle Ford as well that could have been picked by an undercutting defensive back, but he threw it on a laser, and the ball had great velocity that Kyle could go up and high point it. And that was a great throw. Those are so encouraging to see from your quarterback when he can make those high level NFL throws. The other thing, a great athlete. We saw how big of a threat he was in the run game.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
you could tell Lincoln Riley too got in a rhythm, and with his play calling, the offense was very balanced. And a big part of that was Jayden having some of those plays where he'd pull it and the defensive end was starting to crash down and they were getting comfortable, not respecting Jayden. Then he pulls it and hits you for 10, for 15. And now they have to respect that. And then you see Woody Mark had those gaping runs. That was because of Jayden and Woody working hand in hand. The offensive line was phenomenal too, and the run game. But the more reps he gets, the more comfortable he will become. I truly believe that. It's just all going to be about, can he learn and develop? Because like I said, the potential and the athleticism and his ceiling is very high. That's all there, but it's about, can he protect the football and take that next step between the ears, right? Being smart with the football, protecting his team. And I really believe he can do that. And it's just going to come down to how he develops under Lincoln Riley.
Well, speaking of develop, I'm going to bring up some questions that we got from listeners. Rolando said, in what specific areas would you like to see Maiava develop in these last few games and potentially in the offseason as well?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, like I said, just protecting the football, right? Just knowing when to, not put the ball in harm's way. When you have the ball in your hand, you have the team in your hand. That's what I was always told as a quarterback, right? You've got to protect the team. You got to protect your defense. Don't put them in bad spots, especially in close games like that. Like we've seen this entire season. You can't have those costly turnovers. It didn't end up hurting us in this football game. Like I said, our defense did a great job of forcing a field goal on a short field and really flipped the game back around, gave us momentum right back after that 3-and-out. But when you have those turnovers like we've seen before that become an issue, that become consistent, you don't always will get away with them, right? And you start losing those close games like this team has before. Could we have easily been a 7-8 win team at this point in the season? 100%. But there were too many times we had costly turnovers in close games that brought football teams that we were putting away or really distancing ourselves in the second half, brought them back into the game, and then we couldn't finish at the end. So yeah, the biggest thing for me for Jayden is again, dial up the accuracy a little bit. Things he can work on from a mechanical standpoint. I think he has great feet, does a great job being comfortable in the pocket, going through progression, is great on the run, has a great arm. Just and you can see the confidence he has. He trusts his arm, and you want that from your quarterback, but to an extent. You want to be able to know, okay, I can't make every single throw, especially in the Big Ten at this level of football. Some of the throws you might have got away with at UNLV a year ago, you're not going to get away with against Nebraska consistently, or Michigan or Penn State. So you got to be a little bit smarter there. But overall, like I said, it's really going to come down to, he's a young player. People forget he only played 1 year last year as a freshman. He's a sophomore. He hasn't played in over a year. He had to sit this entire season. He hasn't played an actual meaningful snap until this game. So there's a lot of things he's going to have to learn from this game. He has to do it in a quick week, right? Or in a very short amount of time, because you have 2 rivalry games coming up.
Yeah.
And this is really your audition to prove that you can be the guy in the future going forward. So he doesn't have a full season to get that time, but he's going to be able to have to turn around quickly. But yeah, when the season does end, and we'll next week we'll talk about this, and then in the following week, from a week to week basis, how he's improving and if he's taking those next steps. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is just learning to protect the football and not having to be a hero all the time. So that when the big plays do happen, because he has that big play ability all the time,
Yeah.
when those big plays do happen, you take advantage of them instead of trying to make it every single time and putting your team at risk or putting the football, in harm's way and causing turnovers.
Not to beat a dead horse here, but like when it comes to these types of quarterbacks where it's like the no, 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 yes, yes, yes type of quarterback,
Yeah.
I think of the Duce Robinson throw where he's going to his right and then just has that arm strength to get it to Duce, and Duce made an adjustment as well. But is that something that just comes with time if you're a quarterback like Maiava, where you just know when it makes sense to be a little risky and then you kind of pull it back a little bit? Is that just an experience thing?
Yeah, and I wanna say too, the circumstances maybe played a little bit of a factor in that because we talk about him wanting to be a hero and be Superman. Does he and obviously I haven't spoken to him and I don't know, and I know you did an interview with him after the game, which was great to hear a little bit more of his perspective, but he's not gonna give you, fully what he's thinking and
Sure.
and tell you everything. But part of me is does he feel the pressure to have to make these plays because he only gets a short amount of time, these next 3 games? Does
To
he
like
does he feel the
prove
need
it, quote
that,
unquote.
yeah, I've got to prove that I can make these big plays. I got to prove that I'm a Lincoln Riley quarterback. I'm a Caleb Williams. I'm a Kyler Murray, a Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield type guy that I can make these? Or is that, like we said, just something that being a young quarterback, I'm going to
Yeah.
force some of these throws because, and it's great. Like I said, he has confidence in his arm. That is evident. You can see that when you watch the film. I watched the tape back. He's not afraid to make any throw on the field. Now, like I said, just got to be a little bit smarter on when to make those throws and if it's there and if it's not, and check the ball down, and we can come back and make those plays a little bit later. But yeah, it's tough because you don't really know, if, like I said, if he's thinking I've got to make all these plays because I have a short amount of time, or if he's just forcing some throws because he's still inexperienced. But I think time will tell on that. And like I said, there's times in my career where early on, and I took a lot of pride in protecting the football and having a great completion percentage and knowing when to take shots and knowing when not to take shots and putting the football in harm's way. But early on, I had to learn it the hard way, right? I had that pick six against Washington State, and I kind of flash back a little bit there when Jayden had that play my sophomore year when I'm competing for a starting job, when I thought, this is my only chance, trying to force some throws that I maybe shouldn't have, that I wouldn't normally do if I
Mm,
was in a full season or if I was in a rhythm, or knowing that I wasn't looking over my shoulder or trying to
yeah.
be the hero or trying to be the guy. So,
The
that there's
context.
two parts of
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
The
100%.
context
But
makes sense.
like I said, the ceiling is phenomenally high for him. It is. The ceiling is so high, and everyone could see that, especially with how young and talented he is. It's just about, can he develop the right way and be smart? And between the years, is he going to be a type of quarterback that can go, forward and protect the football, or is he going to be someone that continues to force the ball and has a turnover issue? So I think time will tell. But again, I have full confidence in him, and I really have full confidence in Lincoln Riley when it comes to developing quarterbacks. So I'm excited. I already can't wait for see what he does. Getting to self scout now, watch film, sit down with Lincoln, have an entire week of game film and prep to go off of, and then go out next week against the Bruins and prove that he can take that next step.
I also don't know if you saw, but there was a moment that was tweeted on Twitter, and I was actually standing right next to it. But Luke Heward found Maiava after the game. He was in the booth, so he came down the field.
Oh,
Just
love
the
that.
embrace. I was close enough where I could hear it, and he was just so proud of Maiava. So it was really cool to see that interaction as well, because this is the first year that USC's had a quarterback coach that isn't Lincoln Riley. So to see that interaction as well, and their first kind of like interaction, maybe besides at the half, to really celebrate what Maiava did. It was just cool to see that interaction as well. Not sure if you saw it on Twitter, Cody.
Yeah, no, that was a pretty cool moment. I saw that on Twitter, and it's just cool. I mean, it just shows you how much emotion goes into this game and how much time these coaches and players spend together. Like
Yeah.
I've said it before, you spend more time with your coaching staff than you do your family during the season. So it was awesome to see. And Coach Heward, being the type of guy he is and the position coach he is, doesn't matter if it's Miller or Jayden or your fifth string walk on in the game. He wants the best for his entire group. And it was just cool for Jayden and Coach Heward to have that moment. And that's something they're going to build off of going forward, to have that connection and trust each other and getting ready for next week. So yeah, that was a cool moment. I'm glad someone captured that on camera.
For sure. You mentioned Riley being more in a rhythm, and it kind of speaks to a question we got from Turtle. He said, Cody, can you hit on how Maiava works better for Lincoln Riley's system compared to a lesser mobile quarterback? He said, I believe Miller is a great quarterback, but the system may not be the best because he's not a dual threat QB.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, you're not wrong in saying that. We can call it how it is, right? And I think Miller is a phenomenal pocket passer. I really do. When he has time to go through progression and make his reads, and the offensive line's blocking well for him, and the run game's working well, he is very good. And we saw that before. We saw that in the LSU game. We saw that against Louisville a year ago. We saw it at times this year at Wisconsin, another game where when he's in rhythm, and the Rutgers game, can trust the guys around him, get the ball to his playmakers in space. He's a very good pocket passer. He's dangerous in the pocket. Now, the extra element of that is he's not, or the other side of that is he is not the most mobile quarterback. He's not going to take off and run. He's not going to hurt you with his feet. And Lincoln Riley's offense, and I've said this before, when it's at its best, I truly believe there is a quarterback back there that can create on the ground a little bit more than what Miller has done this year, right? And Jayden fits that category. He is more similar to a Caleb Williams, to a Jalen Hurts, right? To some of those guys from before, Kyler Murray. Maybe not as quick and shifty as those guys. He's a little
Yeah.
bit bigger, but he has that ability to take off and run. And we saw that multiple times in this football game, especially on that last drive. But yeah, I just overall, I love the creativity that Lincoln had in this game, especially in the run game. You know, that fourth down option call, and I'll talk about that drive in a second, but that fourth down option call off of, like we talked about, that first play of the game,
Yep.
where we had the fly motion to Zachariah, same exact look, had it coming from the opposite direction. This time we fake it, run an option out the back door. Didn't even see that coming. I was literally in my mind kind of brainstorming, and I was, why don't we go under center? Why don't we do quarterback sneak? Why don't, so many different things I was thinking. And then when the play happened, I was one of those moments, very few happen to me when I'm watching games where I go, that was a genius play call. That was beautiful. I would have never thought of that. What a great call off of the same look they've seen multiple times. They've seen a screen off that fly motion. They've seen a pitch to Zachariah. They've seen a fake, a handoff to Woody. And now you're throwing an option to it, or an option play going out the backside, putting the defensive end in a terrible position
Yeah.
on a 4th and 1 play.
No
That
man's
was
land.
beautiful. I love that call. But that happened the entire game. The creativity in the run game. And we talked about too, when you add a quarterback, and Sua said this on the pregame show, and I love that he brought this up, but when you have a quarterback that is a threat in the run game, and when you have a guard tackle pulling scheme, when you have a zone read scheme, when you have all these different plays that rely on reading a backside defensive end, of leaving an unblocked player so your lineman can pull around and get up to the next level, having a quarterback that is a threat for that player that can pull it and take off and run opens up the run game so much more. This is one of the best run defenses in the country in Nebraska, one of the best in the Big Ten, and we were gashing them on the ground. Woody Marks, play after play, it almost felt like every time he got the ball, there was 4 or 5 yard holes that he could just take off and run and break off explosive play after explosive play. A big part of that was because they couldn't just focus on Woody.
Yeah.
Jayden was a big factor as well. But overall, too, I loved that Lincoln Riley stayed balanced. And I think, again, having Jayden back there with the ability to run, it allowed him to be more comfortable, keeping a balanced attack and running the football a little bit more. We had 35 pass attempts and 31 rush attempts. In my opinion, that is winning football.
We talked about it in the preview. You obviously said that this was the 13th rushing defense in the nation in Nebraska. And you said, we didn't expect USC to have success against Penn State. And then Woody Marks did what he does. Once again, Woody Marks, MVP of USC's offense, just incredible. And I watched the broadcast back, and it's so fascinating to me what they show and what we see on the field, Cody, because Woody Marks took a hit that first, I believe.
A couple, yeah.
He took a lot throughout the game.
Well, we heard it, and we saw it. We also heard it live.
We heard it, and
when we were down in the end zone.
I believe you and I expected Jayden to get the team out, because there was a moment where I was like, is he fully conscious for that? So a scary moment, but he still was able to put on the helmet and keep going. But Woody Marks just had another incredible game, surpassed 1,000 rushing yards on the season. I believe it's the first time USC's had 1,000-yard plus rusher since 2017. I believe that was Ronald Jones.
Yeah.
So just incredible to see what Woody Marks has been able to do for USC and in this Lincoln Riley offense.
This is the definition of a broken record. It sounds like we say this every single episode, and I will say it every single episode because it doesn't get old to me. He is just a phenomenal football player. He is making himself a lot of money this year at the next level. Teams are going to love to have Woody Marks on their roster on Sundays. He is so good, so versatile, so just he's such a great player to have on your team. I wish we had 100 Woody Marks. I really do, especially the mindset that he has. He's the definition of a team first type player, right? We talk about all the time, we before me. I'm going to do everything it takes so that our team can be successful, even if that means I have to block a blitzing corner, even if that means Quentin Joyner comes in and gets some love and I've got to block for him, or Jayden's going to pull it, but I'm still going to sell the run and take a shot or take a hit so Jayden can be successful. He is a definition of that. I love just everything he's about as a football player, as a person. Listening to him talk to on the post-game press conferences and in the preseason. If I'm a quarterback, that is a guy I want next to me in the backfield. And that was a huge thing, I think, for Jayden as well, to be able to have Woody back there. He was also, too, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard was this his Jordan flu game a little bit? Was he sick? I
According to
heard he
Lincoln
had a little bit
Riley,
of a bug.
yeah, in the post-game press conference, he said that he wasn't even sure that Woody was going to play today, and he said I wouldn't have blamed him if he didn't. Apparently, there's a little bit of a flu bug going around. I believe it's on the offensive side of the ball because the defensive guys didn't know what we were talking about when we asked him about the flu. But yeah, so apparently, and I believe that's why Kyron Hudson was also listed as questionable. I believe Jordan Moore interviewed him in the post-game, and he barely had a voice. So Kyron, that is so. It's that time of year. It's going around. I mean, I didn't even do an episode last week, Cody, because I was sick. So I don't think I'm the one who got the team sick, but it's definitely going around. But yes, he was not 100% physically, but also just immune system wise as well.
Keely, there you. That was good. Good clarification there. I'm glad you.
I
threw
knew
that
you were going
out
to
there.
call me out on
nobody,
that.
no, I didn't even think about it until you said it. But okay, good.
Yeah.
Get out there. Disclaimer early.
No, I wasn't near the team at all. Don't blame me.
All right.
I mean,
So
the team played in
no mean tweets.
In
no
a
mean tweets
rain game at UW, so in 40-degree weather, you're bound to get some type of bug after that. But anyway, yes,
100%.
He was not 100%.
That backs up what I'm saying. I mean, he could, like Lincoln said, he could have easily sat out through that game and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm not feeling it today, guys. I'm going to take a rest. We're 4-5. This game, not meaningless. But, I know we're playing for a bowl game, but it's not postseason or anything that's going to happen when it comes to the playoff or a Big Ten championship. This game does not have any implications on the conference. He could have sat out for this and said, "Hey, look, I'm also going to prepare for the draft. I don't want to. If I can miss a game and get healthy, I'll be fine with that." He didn't do that. He put his body on the line for his teammates, and that kind of explains too. Maybe some of it we thought were him taking hits, which he was, and he was out there. He's a warrior, man. I like I said, I'd love to have 100 Woody Marks on my team, but you could also tell he was exhausted and he was tired, and his body just wasn't, right, wasn't feeling great, and you could see that a little bit in between plays. But you could have fooled me when the in between whistles,
Seriously,
right? When he had the football in his hand, when he was running downhill, lowering his shoulder, and like I said, taking hit after hit and popping right back, popping right back up, high fiving his offensive lineman. So just hats off to Woody. My biggest knock on Woody Marks, the thing that I dislike the most about Woody Marks is that we only have him for 1 year. That is the only complaint I have about Woody Marks is that we don't have him for more than 1 year and that he didn't transfer to USC earlier. So that's the only thing I don't like about him. I wish he would have came here earlier, but I think a lot of the Trojan fans and the Trojan family will agree with me on that. He's going to forever be a Trojan, and we get him for a couple more games. So let's enjoy him while we have him. But he's always going to be, like I said, a great Trojan and someone that is the definition of how important the transfer portal is. You know, guys like him,
for sure.
Travis Dye in that category.
He was at the game yesterday too. I saw him.
Yeah, Lloyd from a year ago as well.
Lloyd.
So we've been very fortunate with that, and Woody Marks is right at the top of that list. So like I said, MVP of this offense, MVP of this team. Can't wait to see what he does these last couple of games as well.
Also, just had to give him one more props. I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and he also donates his time to the Boys and Girls Club. And so while he's being a student athlete, he's also volunteering. And he said that his touchdown celebrations are because the Boys and Girls Club, the kids there, give him ideas. And so they tell him what to do, and then they critique him as well. So I thought it was really cute as well.
No, I'm glad you said that. That backs up again what we're saying. That's just,
I know.
That doesn't surprise me. The type of teammate he is also the type of person you are off the field, right? And I truly believe that if you're the same player on the field, in the locker room, and outside of that, in your community, then the sky's the limit for you as a football player, as a teammate, as a leader, as a captain. So again, just phenomenal to have him on our team. I'm glad he's a Trojan, and like I said, when he does leave here, in my opinion, he's going to be a Trojan for life.
Now, you mentioned that Zachariah Branch play multiple times, but Joe Sorio said, I thought Lincoln Riley's creativity in getting Zachariah more involved in the offense was far better than earlier in the season. What are your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, it just felt like, too, that once you get in a rhythm, once you get those first couple of plays going your way, and like I said, that quick little toss play, I know it's not a down-the-field pass. It's not even a hitch route. It's not even a screen. It's an easy extended handoff, basically, but since you're tossing it forward, by definition, it's a pass. But once you give him the football early and it's successful, you start to build that confidence right from the beginning, and we really saw that happen. Instead of it being trying to get him a screen and he loses 4 yards, or he takes a big hit, or and he did take a big hit on that bubble screen, and that worried me a little bit when we had that RPO throw and he took that big hit. But and I thought, was that going to get him out of a rhythm? Was he going to have that hit and kind of reel back a little bit, not be as explosive we're used to seeing him be, or have that keep taking steps forward, because we saw him play well against Washington a week ago, but that wasn't the case. He went down and scored, I think, on the following drive after that, and just he's been playing a lot better as of late these last couple of weeks. But like I said, getting him the ball early, designing him fully into the game plan. Like I said, even if he wasn't getting the ball, those fly sweeps, he was a part of the play throughout the entire game. Even on that option play, he was important to be a bluff, to take a linebacker out of the play, to take the safety over the top out of the play. So when you're that important in a game plan, whether you're getting the football or you're just a decoy on certain plays, you're a little bit more locked in. And it really felt like Lincoln was taking that next step with Zachariah, getting him the football more, allowing him to showcase his ability, and you start to see that confidence come back. And I think a big part of that, like I said, is building off of the momentum from a week ago. Had over 100 yards against Washington, but I think the biggest thing for him too is seeing him get in the end zone. That was great to see.
Yeah.
Great move too. I thought he was going to go out of bounds right there. Stayed in
Yeah.
bounds, tightrope the sideline, lowered his shoulder, wasn't afraid to take a hit, and then finally finished in the end zone. So yeah, it was awesome. And like I said, that goes back to the play calling. It really felt like this week Lincoln Riley was at his best when it comes to a being a play caller this year, because everybody was firing all around him, right? You had the run game was working great. Maiava, after the first, interception, started to get into a rhythm a little bit. Some risky throws, but he was pushing the football down the field. That forced Nebraska to have to play a little bit deeper, right? When you have a quarterback that's a little bit more of a threat down the field or can make those big plays, you don't get, as a defensive coordinator, as an opposing defense, you are a little bit more worried, right? You are a little bit more susceptible to some of those explosive plays. So you can't just come up, hug the line of scrimmage, or keep everything in front of you. So I think those all work hand in hand. But yeah, I love the way that Lincoln, got Zachariah more involved in the game plan. I expect him to continue to do that going forward.
On the whole, I know we got questions in the preview wondering how USC's wide receivers were going to gel with Maiava on a short amount of time. I do want to highlight, I want to ask you overall what you saw on that front, but also just want to highlight the day that Duce Robinson had. He had 4 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. Both the yards and the targets, or excuse me, the receptions were a career high for him. So a great day for him. I thought that he looked really comfortable out there, Cody.
Yeah, I thought there were some big time performances today in the receiver room, obviously led by Duce Robinson. He did a good job of showcasing what he can do, as a playmaker. And I love too that long, the over route he had, the 48, 50-yard touchdown that he had in
Yeah.
that game, showcased his speed a little bit, showed that he's not just a big playmaking possession type receiver. He can also take it the distance and make some of those explosive plays down the field, not just in the red zone, right? So that was great to see. And we've questioned throughout the entire year who's going to be that wide receiver one at this point in the season with 2 games left. I don't even care anymore. It's irrelevant, right? We have a bunch of wide receiver ones, in my opinion. It's a good problem to have. I have talked about before, wanting to have a Nelson Aguilar type or a Juju Smith Schuster or, a Marquise Lee, guys when I was here that I knew I could trust and find in those tight moments or in those crunch time, got to have it situations because you built that relationship with them. But you have a new starting quarterback, and Jayden's obviously going to have to build some connection with these guys. As of right now, Duce is his go-to guy, but he did a good job of spreading the football around. And the biggest thing for me is our receivers played exactly how they needed to when you have a young quarterback making his first start. You have to make some big time plays to help him out and even bail him out a little bit in
Yeah.
this game, right? We saw the Kyron Hudson touchdown, a little bit underthrown. The DB got a hand on the football, broke his concentration, bounced off his chest plate, still made an unbelievable catch. Kyron is the king of unbelievable catches, by the way. It
It
just feels
seems
like
like he
every
loves
time
hard catches.
he's so quiet. He's quiet in the game, doesn't really get the football. And then when he does make a catch, it's all you talk about the next day
Right.
because of how big of a play it is. So it's just awesome to see another spectacular circus type catch. It bounced off his chest, kept his feet. I don't know how he caught it and still kept his feet in the back of the end zone or kept
Right.
them in balance, but that was unbelievable to see. Duce Robinson, like we talked about, had that 50-50 throw. As great of a throw that was from Maiava to show his arm strength. Wasn't the best decision, right? And Duce came back and bailed him out. That was a 50-50 ball. The DB had a chance to make a play on it. Duce mossed him. And I'd like to say Jayden did it because he knew of the personnel he had down there. Hey, Duce is a tall receiver. He's going to go up and get it. But still a little bit of an iffy throw, in my opinion. But that's what you need when you're making your first start. Have some of these young guys or have some of your receivers help you out down the field. Duce is at that. Another one was the Makai Lemon catch on 3rd down. Now, that wasn't a bad decision. That ball just got tipped, but your receiver bails you out again. That was unbelievable, by the way. That's probably the play of the game. And it felt like this year, and for those of you who didn't see the game or don't remember, the ball, Jayden was going to throw it deeper down to the left side of the field. I think he was taking the deep route to the left. The ball gets tipped by I think defensive lineman got a hand on it. Someone coming around the edge tipped the ball, and it's going right towards the crosser, which is Makai, but the defender has a chance on it. Makai tips it. The DB tips it. Makai catches it and still gets about, I think, 8 or 9 yards and gives us a chance to go on that option play on 4th and 1. So when you're having a tough season, you know what? I'll take it. We need some of those lucky plays to go our way. And that was a great heads up play by Makai Lemon. But yeah, because we've been on the wrong side of those
I was
too many
about to
times this
say,
year.
yeah, it
There's
felt
too many
like the
times when the
luck
ball doesn't bounce
switched
our way.
on Saturday. It
No
did.
pun intended.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that was great to see. But yeah, like I said, overall, it was awesome that, led by Duce Robinson, but our receivers were making the plays they needed to make to help, and Zachariah Branch as well, to help out Jayden. that first touchdown was just a little bubble route. Should have been maybe a 2 or 3 yard game, but he stays in bounds, puts his foot in the ground, gets vertical, dips under the defender, and scores a touchdown. And now you're feeling better as a quarterback. I just threw a touchdown on an RPO. Those are good things that are happening that make you feel good, especially after a mistake. So a huge shout out to our wide receiver core. That was awesome to see. They stepped up big and helped out their young quarterback making his first start.
Speaking of receivers, we got a question from Mr. Ashcraft who said, I didn't see Jacoby Lane in the game. Was he hurt? That's also something that I picked up on and was actually tracking at the first half of the game. He didn't play according to my watching in the first quarter, and he came in at around the 9-minute mark in the second quarter. So I don't know what that's about, to be honest with you, Mr. Ashcraft. We did mention how Woody has the flu. Maybe he was a flu guy as well. Not sure, but definitely something that we can ask in this week to Riley and kind of find out more there, because that was interesting, and I definitely wanted to see him kind of connect with Maiava. So definitely something we will watch for going forward. Now, I feel like it would be remiss, Cody, if we're talking about how well USC did in the run game, to not bring up USC's offensive line. Just curious your thoughts on their performance on Saturday.
Yeah, we've given them a hard time at the beginning of this year, and that was rightfully so. They struggled early on this season, especially in pass protection, especially on the outside, but they just continue to get better and better as the season goes on. And the biggest thing for me that it comes down to, and we've talked about this even last year when we were doing, probably 2 years ago, Keely, when we were doing this show, is about building continuity up front,
Yeah.
building consistency with that starting five. They are starting to play so much better together now. And I like watching when I'm in a game or going back and watching film, or when we watch on the sideline, watching their communication, how it gets echoed from Monheim to the guards to the outside tackles, right? How they communicate, how they're ready to go. When you play in Lincoln Riley's offense and you get up there and do those ghost type plays, or those fake plays where you fake the snap count, look to the sideline. As soon as they give you the play call, you got to make your calls and go. You got to be ready. They have done such a great job of pre-snap communication, being on the same page. I was a little worried, like I mentioned, going into this game, because it's always a little iffy with the new quarterback. Is the operation going to be the same? Are you going to be off a little bit? Are there going to be a lot of false starts? Are there going to be some center quarterback exchange issues? Maybe a couple fumbled snaps. But overall, I thought it was a very clean operation. Like I said, especially with a new quarterback. So that was great to see, and we've talked about wanting to get better, wanting to build that confidence. It starts in the run game. And that was true from the beginning of this year. When we were struggling in pass protection, we had to get Woody Marsh going. We had to get Quentin Joyner going. We had to show that we could run the football to start building that confidence. And we did just that. And now it's paying huge dividends, later in this season. And you really see that consistency with that starting five. Ever since Alani Noah kind of solidified him spot at that right guard spot, it has been the same unit going forward. And then they've really developed well under Coach Henson this season. And that wasn't the case early on. So you didn't really know what to expect. But that's very encouraging to see, especially going into the offseason. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be some new faces again.
Yeah.
And we're going to lose some of those guys up front, but there are a lot of young core players up there in this unit, especially at left tackle and Elijah Page, who continues to get better, and Alani Noah, who's really taking huge strides forwards. Now, was it perfect on the day? No. Were there some issues up front at times in the run game where we gave up maybe a misassignment, or we let a defensive lineman cross our face and get in the backfield? Sure. But overall, I thought it was very impressive because of the defense we were playing.
I was just about to ask you that. Yeah.
Like we talked about,
the 3-3-5.
And if you didn't watch the preview episode, go back and watch the preview episode. They played a 3-3-5, and I gave a full breakdown of that. But what that means is it's different than a 4-3, it's different than a 3-4, which you're used to seeing. To where, okay, I'm going to 4 down these guys in a 3-4, knowing the rush end is technically a defensive end. Those are the 3 linebackers. These are the DBs. It's pretty plain and simple, right? That's your base defense, what you're used to seeing. In a 3-3-5, it is 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. That's a very unique defense. Your communication becomes a little bit more difficult. Who is the 4th down lineman, right? We have 5 offense linemen, 3 defense linemen. Who do we 4th down lineman? Who's our protection going to? How do we block this week? Do we treat it as odd? Do we treat it, so there's so many different things going into that. If you want to get the full breakdown, obviously go back to the preview episode. Little shout out there. I know the game's over, so it's kind of pointless now. But anyways, but yeah, it's so I was a little concerned going into this game, because not only of how good they've been up front on defense, with Hutmaker, with Robinson. We talked about their interior players, Butler on the outside, how good they are, but also a new look defense that you're not used to going against. And Tony White is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. They've had a ton of success. So with all that being said, I was very pleased with how well we performed up front on with our offense line, especially in the run game. Pass game only gave up 1 sack on the day. That was great. Did give up some pressures here and there. That's going to happen. But when you have a quarterback like Maiava, he can help you out there and bail you out in some of those plays like he did. But again, maybe throw away some of those plays instead of trying to do too much. But overall, very pleased with this offensive line. I've got to give them credit. Is it perfect yet? Is it where we want to be? Is it a finished product? Absolutely not. There's still young guys that are learning 100%. They're still developing. But from where they were at the beginning of this season to where they are now in the Big Ten, playing some of these physical defensive line and these physical front sevens, very pleased and very encouraging to see from this group.
Now, the final thing for me, I want to talk about, Cody, when it comes to this offense, and you talked about it a little bit, but and you've stressed this the whole season, the ability to finish, especially in these close games. And it almost felt like Groundhog's Day, the sequence that we saw kind of towards the end of that third quarter and into the fourth. But you have that turnover by Jayden Maiava. You have the field goal attempt that was good for Nebraska, but then you have a blocked field goal attempt on USC's part, which is just crazy. And then USC has an opportunity to kind of ice the game or at least go ahead by a bigger margin. What did you see from USC to put it together in their final offensive drive?
Well, and I know I'm not the only one in that moment. Like you said, the turnover, then they go down and get a field goal, then we get blocked. First thing that I'm sure popped into everybody's mind was, here we go again, right? We're going to find a way to lose this game. And that's the frustrating part. But when it's been consistent this year to where we haven't been able to finish, those are the feelings that come back, right? Until you prove otherwise. And we did just that. This was a phenomenal drive by Lincoln Riley, by Jayden Maiava, by this offensive line, by Woody Marks, by Mikhail, everyone involved on this final drive. This is winning football. And I'm glad that we're finishing with this on the offensive segment because it's so important to be able, when you're an offensive head coach, when you're a play caller like Lincoln Riley, when you take pride in being a dominant offense, not only in the Big Ten, but in the entire country, you've got to put games away with the ball in your hand when you have those opportunities, right? You're great playmakers, you're great play callers, make those things happen. They finish games when they have the chance to, and we did just that. And that was very encouraging to see. We went 13 plays, 84 yards, finished with a touchdown. That took 7 minutes and 40 seconds off of the game clock. That is the definition of finishing a game. And like you said, it was 21-20 at that point to extend the lead to now. And I know there were some questions. Do you go for two? No, kick the extra point, force them to have to go for two.
Yeah.
Force them to score basically twice. Now they have to go score a touchdown. Then they also have to keep their offense out there and score a 2-point conversion, right? So I'm totally fine with the play call, especially at that point in the game. But that was great to see, right? We haven't been able to get that job done before today. Or the other side of that, the defense didn't get a stop. And that'll be our last segment. Don't want to foreshadow too much, but we have to finish segment about defense too. It just really came together, and we've talked about playing complementary football on both sides of the ball for all four quarters. Were there some up and down times throughout the game? Were there some moments where it felt like I said, here we go again? Sure. What you always look at is how can you finish, right? Lincoln Riley always talks about we're a couple plays away. We made the plays in this game, and especially on offense. That was awesome to see. Now looking at that drive, and we've talked about it before, but that option play was unbelievable. I won't talk about that too much. Again, the unbelievable catch by Mikhail Lemon, the play before off the tip football. A little bit of luck, but it went our way. But the creativity on that drive, especially on the touchdown call, right? We had Walker Lyons in a pistol formation behind Jayden Maiava. And if you're a defensive back, I'd love that. I can't wait to talk to Sue or Sean about this, or even Sean on Trojans Live tomorrow night. But what do you do? It's like the Tyler Warren play. And I'm not trying to give people flashbacks. Sorry for saying the name. But Tyler Warren from Penn State. You have a tight end and a pistol formation in the backfield. What do? We haven't seen that this year, right? And you're a Tony White. Who's responsible for him? Then before you can figure out what your call is, where the strength of formation is, you have a fake, and then you leave a defensive back or their nickel defender one-on-one with Jayden Maiava and Walker Lyons lead blocking for him. What a great move and finishing in the end zone. Love Maiava in space as well. That was an awesome play to get in the end zone. Very fitting for him to kind of finish with the rushing touchdown at the end there after the mistakes early on. And after, like I said, starting 3 of 8 or 3 of 9 and not really getting anything going with the pick six. So it was awesome to see him be able to finish that game off and really give him confidence. But like I said, being able to finish games, especially when you have a head coach like Lincoln Riley that takes pride in his offense and his play calling, is very important to do. We haven't been able to do that a whole lot this year, really at all on both sides of the ball. But that was a phenomenal job by Lincoln Riley in this offense. I've got to, like I said, tip my cap to Coach Riley. He was in his bag this game, calling plays on offense, and it was great to see, and that was very evident there on that final drive.
Do you feel like there were more unique formations involving the tight ends?
Yeah.
I thought
Oh, yeah.
on my rewatch. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we started out too, and I think the first series we went the fake play.
Yeah.
And we did it. You could tell with two when we got back into the script, but we had two tight ends on that play.
Yeah.
Right.
And then went that way.
The next play we went empty.
Yeah.
Then we went empty again with double tight. Yeah. So no, he did a good job. That's you love that and I think that goes into a little bit playing a 3-3-5, right? If hey, you're going to be difficult to identify and talk or to figure out, we're going to do the same thing to you, right? We're going to bring in double tight. We're going to go empty. We're going to put Woody Marks out there on the first third down. We threw a hitch route to him on the outside. Haven't seen that a whole lot this year. Forcing the defender to play off, right? So yeah, we played a little bit of chess in this football game, and I've always talked about it's a game versus a game, and that's why I get so excited about these coordinator battles. But Lincoln Riley's head coach, but Lincoln Riley and Tony White kind of trying to one up each other, and we did just that, right? We forced him to be confused there too, and like I said, that option play, that final play with Walker Lyons and the pistol formation was just great to see. And when it was all said and done, Lincoln Riley had the final say, and we finished in the end zone on that last drive, which was very encouraging for something that we've struggled on this season.
Alrighty, Cody. Any other thoughts on USC's offense before we head over to the defense?
No, the one thing I will say, and I think it's important to talk about, and I guarantee you it's going to be I'm trying to say this in a polite way. It's going to be a interesting or a not so fun film session for a couple guys today or on Monday when they get back to the film room, because some of those penalties after the snap and crucial points in this game cannot happen. And look, I know it's a physical game. I know it got chippy. I know before the game even started, they're standing on our logo, which is unacceptable. And I love that our guys went out there and we're talking trash and got them off the logo, and it got a little bit, fired up. That's what you want. Two blue bloods, two teams fighting, to turn the corner, to get back to the promised land, to get to a bowl game this year. There's a lot of emotions going into that game, but you can't let that carry over into the game, especially when it hurts a team like that, right? Makai
Mm.
had one when we were driving before the Kyron Hudson touchdown down there. That just can't happen. That 15-yarder. Zachariah Branch had one before half. Those plays like that. They had a couple too. So I'm not saying it's just us, but we've got to clean that up. We can't have those unforced errors. You got to just, do all the talking between the whistles. Don't do it after the play. Don't cost your team. Don't hurt your team. Those 15-yarders, especially down in the red zone, especially at the end of the second half when we're trying to put together a 2-minute drive and score some points before we give the football right back to Nebraska to start the third quarter, that can't happen, right? So that's one thing for me. And then the other thing, the block field goal. I know it's not quite offense, but I'm putting it in that category. That can't happen. That we have to get that fixed. That's the second time this year, right? Happened against Maryland, almost the exact situation, and then it happens again on Saturday against Nebraska. And these crucial moments, and these got to have it, game-changing situations, that just can't keep happening. It's got to get fixed. And you may argue, hey, why don't we just go for it? But in that situation, there's no reason to. We don't need to. They just kicked the field goal. We're going to come right back, down the field, erase those 3 points because we're going to score 3 of our own, and we're going to go back up by 4 points, force them to have to score a touchdown, right? They can't just kick a field goal to tie the game or take the lead. So love the call there to kick it, but we've got to get that fixed when it comes to special teams. Block kicks, especially in those moments, can't keep happening.
Yeah, and Riley was asked about it in the post-game press conference, and he essentially said the same thing. He said, obviously, it's been an issue that we've got to correct. We've emphasized it a lot, worked on it a lot, but clearly we have to do a better job of it. I haven't seen the replay, but we've obviously need to do better on the edges. It's going to be a huge emphasis going forward, he said. So, yeah, it's one of those plays where I feel like it just takes the air out of whatever momentum
100%.
you may have. It really has that. And we've seen that affect the team. Like when you do have those big swings of momentum, it does end up ultimately impacting them. Didn't on Saturday, but we have seen it this season.
That play for me, that was the here we go again play, right? The block kick for me, that was the moment. That the Jayden fumble a little bit was concerning. All right, then they go
Yeah.
down, we hold them to a field goal. Okay, good. And I'm like, all right, this is a big drive for us. What are we going to do? As soon as that block kick happened, 3 bad things in a row happened. Field goal, somewhat bad. Obviously, we held them to 3, so I'll take that from Nebraska. But as soon as that block kick happened, it felt like for me that was the here we go again moment. And I don't want to say I lost all hope, but I was not as optimistic as I was, 30 seconds before that, and that's fine. And that's the other thing too, looking at that play. I know there were questions about running it on third down on that situation. I think it was 3rd and 8,
Yeah.
and it looked like for me the play clock was off, or the 15-second, in helmet communication had expired. So it looked like Jayden made that call on his own. Hopefully someone asked Coach Riley about that situation. I, was a little bit surprised that we ran the football there if we weren't planning on going for it on 4th down, but was that something that maybe they talked about or looked at Jayden liked and got to? But either way, I know the kicking game isn't offense. I just put it in this category here at the end because it basically is on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, that can't happen. There's too many times in college football and NFL football and football in general that games come down to a kick, that come down to 3 points, right? We have to be able to get that fixed, and that can't be a reoccurring issue going forward.
Alrighty, Cody, I want to talk about USC's defensive performance. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Alrighty, Cody, from a matchup perspective, I was really curious what we were going to see when it comes to Nebraska's offense, just because they have a new OC. How much can you really change in 2 weeks? And I'm curious what you saw on that front. How different was it from your film study of what we saw from Nebraska's previous OC?
Yeah, it was kind of what we expected, right? There were some different things they did, especially with their concepts in the passing game, but not enough to where it changed their offense. And that's the difficult part this week. And obviously Dan Lynn and this staff knew that. Now his workload probably got a little bit heavier this week, having to go back and watch some Holgerson film from years ago because they can add a couple plays here and there, but they're not going to change their entire scheme. It's just too difficult, especially in season. And Nebraska has always ran or has been running a pro style offense under Marcus Satterfield, who was our offense coordinator under Matt Rule. Holgerson is a complete opposite. He's the Mike Leach, the Lincoln Riley, run and gun, the air raid type offense where you're going to see these big numbers and a lot of points. So it's just two different worlds, but it's too difficult to change your entire scheme, going into that week, even if you have 2 weeks with a bye week. So it was very much the same Nebraska offense we've seen before. Play style, or when it came to play calling, like I said, a little bit more aggressive, but they were struggling to find guys open down the field. And that's, hats off to Dan Lynn and this defense. Our DBs in the back end played very well. It was great to get some guys healthy back there again, too. Did a good job of flying around the field. Could be a little bit better with our pass rush, and we'll talk about that in a second here. But you never really saw Raiola get comfortable. He was forcing some throws throughout the day. He got off his spot good enough. Like to see some more sacks and some more production there, but got him off his spot enough to where he had to make some throws on the run, improvise a little bit, and he couldn't get comfortable. So that was good to see. But overall, I was just very impressed with Danton Lynn as a whole this year. I know it's been up and down, and we're not where we want to be, but where we were a year ago to where we are now, facing all of these new offenses that we haven't seen before, right?
Yeah.
Dan Lynn was a defensive coordinator for 1 year last year with UCLA, so he played in the Pac-12. This is our first year in the Big Ten. This is his first year at USC. A lot of new faces on this defense. You're kind of learning on the fly. I thought he's done a great job this year, and Saturday was another example of that. We did give up, a couple big-time plays, especially at the start of the second half on some of those bigger drives where they moved the football down the field. But overall, when you look at the numbers, or you look at the game as a whole, we only gave up 10 points on defense, right? You take away the pick six, you take away the fumble where they held them to a 3-and-out and have 3 points. That's 10 points right there. So we as a defense, or I say they as a defense did a good job of holding this Nebraska offense. So only 10 points. And you look at their drives, it was just a dominant performance from start to finish. Nebraska on the day, they went punt, touchdown, interception, punt, field goal, which was on a short field after the turnover, 3-and-out, and then punt, and then finish the game with an interception. That is winning football. That is dominant football. Held them to 300 yards on the day. They only had just over 100 yards rushing. This was a great performance. Had 2 interceptions on Dylan Raiola. We talked about a young quarterback, force him to be uncomfortable, take the football away. We did just that. And the final thing I'll say, just kind of an overall thing about Danton Lynn, is he consistently puts guys in position to win. And that is the best thing you can have as a play caller, is he find ways to put our guys in the best spot to go make plays. Now, we don't always make them, and we've got to continue to get better from a personnel standpoint, from playing on the field, from getting comfortable in the scheme, to continuing to develop. There's times where he'll dial up some perfect play calls when it comes to pressure, when it comes to having free rushers in the backfield, constantly getting one-on-one looks on the outside from our defensive ends. We've just got to be a little bit more consistent on winning those. But he puts our guys in great spots. When linebacker, tons of time. How many times you watch on film where Mascarenas Arnold or Mason Cobb are coming free, and the offensive line can't get to the next level because of the double team or because of the front we're doing, and we get a tackle for loss, or we get a one-on-one tackle with the running back. And then the last play of the game was phenomenal. I love the play call, playing picket fence, but everybody back there playing the line of scrimmage or playing the end zone on the last play. Let Greedy Vance be that rover type player. You have DeCarlos Nicholson in coverage. Greedy Vance goes underneath, makes a big play. We still go all out cover zero on that look and bring pressure, so Raiola has to get the ball out quick. Just beautiful play calling throughout the entire game. Can it be better? As a whole, yes, from both, a schematic standpoint and from a player standpoint, personnel, there's always room for improvement. And Dan Lynn will be the first one to say that. I love how hard he is on himself about wanting to get better. And these players reiterate that and talk about the standard being the standard. But again, a huge credit to this defense. They played great football on Saturday and were a huge reason that we won this football game, especially on a turning point in this game of holding to a field goal after a turnover on a short field.
You talk about the secondary, Cody, and it was good to see both Jacoby Covington and Kamari Ramsey back there. But I just want to highlight, first of all, you gave him props, and then he goes on to have a great day. But Jaylen Smith, first that pass breakup, and then his second interception of the season. What have you seen from Jaylen Smith as a whole? I mean, he continues to just show that he's a versatile piece for USC's defense and just is a smart player overall.
Yeah, that's the key word right there that you just said. And that's the word that we've always, said to describe him as versatility. And what makes him so good in Dan Lynn's scheme is Lynn always preaches, I need players who are versatile, who can play anywhere on
Yeah.
this field. And he was one of the first guys he talked about that can play all 5 positions in the secondary. He can play both safety spots. He can play either corner spot. He can play that nickel position. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he makes up with it from his physicality, right? And he's another guy I talked about Woody Marks, he's another guy that is making himself a lot of money this year. And I've said that over and over again. NFL scouts are going to love him because, like we just said, his versatility. He can play anywhere on the field, and he has a physicality to play on the outside or to play at that safety spot. That is rare. You don't see a lot of guys that can play both safety and corner. You see a lot of guys that can maybe play corner and nickelback. That's very
Yeah.
common. But to be able to play safety and corner is a very rare feat, and he's someone that can do both. So he's been phenomenal. Another guy in the secondary I thought that played well was DeCarlos Nicholson. We talked about him needing to step up against these big receivers for Nebraska. I thought he did a phenomenal job going against Eure, against Banks, their other 6'4" wide receiver, two very good athletic playmakers. And that's what we talked about. Nicholson needing to use his size in this game. He did just that on the last play of the game. What was I know you're smirking. I'm smirking. Hey, you know what? I'll say this. I'm not going to say what my opinion is on it. I'll just say that we've been on the wrong end of some missed calls or some calls that shouldn't have been made this year. So whether it was a PI, whether it wasn't, you can argue with whoever you want to. We won. That's all I'm going to say about
It
it.
evens
But he was
itself
involved on that
out,
play.
one could say.
I'll say this. It was great physicality by DeCarlos Nicholson on that play. Greedy Vance came over and made the interception. But yeah, I mean, again, Smith, Nicholson, it was great to have Kamari Ramsey back. There was in the secondary as a whole, I thought we did a good job on the outside of being sticky, right? Deion Bailey said that before. I've talked about that before. We were hip to hip the entire day. Not a lot of easy catches. There were some plays down the field. Like I mentioned, that first drive coming out of the second half, I thought there were some easy completions. That touchdown play where they had the back out of the backfield. I don't know if that was quite a little bit of miscommunication between Smith and Keely Arnold, or Keely just lost outside contain because we're playing cover three. We rotated down with Keely. Then you see Jaylen Smith run across away with the receiver, and Keely's left is that outside defender. I don't know if he knew that Jaylen was gone and he thought he had outside leverage, or he just wasn't playing outside enough and had a misassignment. Either way, outside of that, we really didn't give up anything in the air. We gave up some explosive plays on the ground, but we did a good job and it wasn't even a bend don't break. It was a dominant performance, but we didn't give up the big plays to where it hurt us. We did a good job of stopping them when they got down the red zone. We did a good job, like I said, on a short field of getting some 3 and outs, of forcing them to some punts. They could never get in a rhythm the entire day. So that was a phenomenal job. And that was really put together by our secondary, by our DBs, and some young guys have had to step up this year. And it's great to see them develop. But when we're at our full strength in our secondary is when we're at our best. And we've challenged this group. We've talked about before when they have teams that can throw the football a little bit, when they have a quarterback that can push the football down the field. I know Raiola is young, but his talent jumps off the tape. He can absolutely go out there and hurt you. We've struggled a little bit on the back end. So it was great to see us, like I said, play sticky coverage all day, not give them really anything through the air on the ground. And like I said, a big part of that was the play from our secondary.
Yeah, and it made you realize how much Kamari Ramsey has been missed because he has such a nose for the football. He's so intelligent and he's so quick with it too. You know what I mean? Like he just sniffs things out, and it's just such a physical presence for USC's defense.
Yeah, he's another guy who's making himself some money, but I'm not going to say that because we get to keep him here at USC. Well, hopefully, I know obviously NIL transfer, all those things happen, and you never know, but hopefully he's not making himself some money in NIL elsewhere. But in the future, yeah, he's going to be phenomenal on Sunday. Speaking of that, too, and who he reminds me of a little bit, and this is off topic real quick, but Kalen Bullock has been playing great football. That number 7,
that's a great point.
TJ McDonald, another guy from the past, and obviously Taylor Mays was number 2, but having Taylor Mays in your corner, with Kamari, you see that flash of how physical he can be. But Kalen Bullock, another guy, we just have a history of having really good safeties, and I'm glad you brought that up. Kamari Ramsey is right up there with them, and he's still a young player. He's got a couple more years here at USC, so I'm excited for him and what he can bring to this defense.
Now, you mentioned scheming people open and Lynn putting people in the best position to succeed. We had a lot of questions, and it's been a big topic, obviously, about USC's defensive line generating pressure and getting sacks. And we had All our defensive questions this week, Cody, were about getting pressure. It's from three people. Sean Tong said, why can't the D-line get sacks? Is it the coaching staff or the players? De La Cruz said, has Coach Henne tried to get success out of the D-line? Has he toyed with formations or stunts to generate more pressure? Or is it just a matter of personnel? And Jonathan said, how do we get more pressure with a 3- and 4-man rush?
Yeah, that's a topic too that we've talked about a lot this year, and that's one that I had in my notes for this game. Just not good enough yet in the pass rush. We're last in the Big Ten right now in sacks. We're just really not generating enough pressure. And there are times that we, like I said, forced Raiola off his spot to where he wasn't getting comfortable. We just aren't getting home. And those are impact plays on defense. The ways you can make impact plays up front as a defensive line, as a front seven, or tackles for loss, are sacks and sack fumbles, right? Tips as well, tips that turn into interceptions. But you've got to be great at getting home in the pass rush. Really, since Tuipulotu, we haven't had a dominant pass rusher. Now, yes, there have been some injuries this year. Yes, we lost Anthony Lucas. Yes, we've had a lot of freshmen have to step up and play a bigger role than maybe they expected this year. And I've talked about before, Dan Lynn does a good job of putting guys in positions to win. We're just not winning enough. We did have 2 sacks on the day, so I'm not going to say it was a bad performance. We've seen you know, lack of productivity in more games in the past than we have on Saturday. So that was good to see that we are getting a couple sacks on the day, and it was great to see Solo get a sack. That was awesome. And then Elijah Hughes had a beautiful move on that coming around the edge and finishing in the backfield and getting a sack on Raiola. But just there's too many times right now that we're not productive enough when guys have a free rush. And the last part of that, and I think the most important question was the last one. We can't just rely on bringing a safety, bringing multiple linebacker pressures, bringing a corner, bringing more than 4 to get home in the backfield, right? We have to be able to just pressure with a 4 or 3-man front and get the job done. The good defenses, the great defenses do that. Now, how do we take that next step? In my opinion, and talking to Sean Cody, and I love hearing Sean's perspective on this. All American, he's tuning the Trojans live.
Yeah.
He always talks about the line, but he just says, you've got to get consistent. Jordan always asks him, what does that look like? Just comes down to reps, right? Same thing I talked about with Jayden Maiava, right? Just continuing to get reps, continuing to understand what it's like playing in the Big Ten. This is a new conference. This is very good week in and week out, very good offensive lines that we're facing. These are bigger physical players than we're used to seeing in the Pac 12, especially at the tackle position. It's tough to get around some of those guys. A couple first rounders that we've gone against this year, especially when we played LSU out of conference as well. So the guys are going to continue to develop and get better. But I have no doubt in my mind that Coach Henderson and Coach Lynn are the right guys to help these players get to that next step. And we've seen flashes of how good they can be. We saw a couple plays from Cameron Fountain on the day. Like I said, Elijah Hughes with the sack. We saw a couple great plays by Devin Tompkins up front. Braylon Shelby, another guy that are continuing to develop and get better. They just got to take that next step. And as a defensive lineman, what does that look like? It's production in the backfield. It's getting sacks, getting some tips, having some tackles for loss. So again, I think we have the right guys here to do it, right coaches here to do it as well. It's just about getting those reps and taking that next step.
I thought this was a flashy game for both Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas Arnold. I thought Cobb was everywhere and playing kind of with his hair on fire, what we expected from him coming over from Oklahoma State. But just curious what you saw from USC's inside linebackers there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. They've been playing some great football. They've been very consistent this year. And for as much as we gave Cobb a hard time last year and we're critical of him, and I'm sure he was of himself, right? We saw how good he was at Oklahoma State. Had a little bit of a down year a year ago, but he has really just revitalized his career this season under Coach Lynn. Easton Mascarenas Arnold, we knew what we were getting when he transferred over from Oregon State. But those guys have been just very consistent, especially with Eric Gentry going out. We didn't know what to expect with that rotation and what those guys are going to look like and how this defense was going to look with Gentry out. Now, yes, does he add a different factor to this defense when Gentry's out there and he can fly around and do some different things? Absolutely. But Cobb and Mascarenas Arnold has stepped up huge, like you said. Another game where they're at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to tackles. And that's a good thing to see. When your linebackers are leading in tackles and not your safeties and your corners, that means you're doing a good job against the run. And that's been evident this entire season. Love what I'm seeing from Mascarenas Arnold, from Cobb. Wish we had Mascarenas Arnold for another year.
Yeah.
That's another guy that I wish we could have back. Just his athleticism too at that middle linebacker spot is so impressive. I think back to when he had an open field tackle against Alex Orji when we were playing Michigan, and it was him in the sideline, and Orji had to step on him, and he still made the play. It's just unbelievable how well he moves laterally and sideline to sideline and can cover so much ground from that middle linebacker spot. And then Cobb, another guy that just continues to get better. Huge shout out too to Matt Entz. I got to give a lot of credit. I know we always give praise to Danton Lynn, rightfully so, but Matt Entz has made a huge impact in that linebacker room. Guys are really developing well under him. I'm excited about, hopefully another coach that I know he's going to be a hot commodity this offseason. Hopefully we can keep him in the future. But he's been great for this linebacker group. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. But Cobb and Mascarenas Arnold have been huge impact players for this defense, and I expect them to continue to do so over these next couple of weeks.
First of all, very proud of you for saying laterally, very
Laterally,
nonchalant.
laterally.
It was no big deal.
Well, context here. I couldn't say the word laterally for like
Sorry.
the first the first 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I said it once and now I can't mess it up. Now I'm like walking around
I
all
love
high and
it.
mighty, like, yeah, oh, hey, I'll ask my wife, can you hand me that? Can you throw that over here laterally? So I do that. I just messed it up.
There you go. It's
Moving
okay.
on.
You curse yourself. But second, just a little interesting point too, hearing from Easton after the game on Saturday. He actually said that this has been one of the most challenging years, both on and off the field for him, in the sense of just adjusting to life in Los Angeles and at USC and that student life. He said, but he was like,
Yeah.
again, but on the other hand, I've learned so much about myself and I wouldn't change it for the world. Like he was like, I'm so glad I came to USC and did all this because you learn the most about yourself when you're forced to grow in that regard. But I just thought it was interesting, just that human perspective. I think a lot of times we always think about, college football as a video game, and it is, but you know what I mean? Like you forget that these are humans and people and college students, 18 to 21-year-olds. So just a little interesting tidbit we learned on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great point. That's the other side of the transfer portal, right? That it's not talked about. You just say, "Oh, this guy picks up and leave. This guy leave. This guy." Like you're still making big decisions. You're still leaving your life behind.
Yeah.
That you've built, whether it's 1 year or 3 years or however long you've been at your previous program or university, you're still leaving a life behind and friends and teammates to go somewhere else. So that is the human aspect of it. As easy it is, we talk about, hey, go get your NIL money, go to another place. College football is ruined because guys can transfer so much. It is still very challenging mentally on these young men, on these players that are still, 17 to 21, 22-year-olds that
Yeah.
are, well, COVID year things. We've had some 6th, 7th year, 8th year guys that are
Yeah.
probably 25, but anyways, almost our age. But anyways, outside of that, it's mentally challenging. So I'm glad he opened up about that and was just real with us. You can, connect so much better to a player or understand them a little bit more when they are authentic. And I've talked about being a leader and opening up and being real about some of those struggles and how difficult it is. So I'm glad he said that. But hey, another guy that like I said, the Woody Marks category, bummed that we only get him for a year, but forever grateful for everything he's doing for USC football. He has had a huge impact on this defense and has done a great job of helping us take that next step from where we were a year ago, and wish him nothing. We got him for a couple more games, but wish him nothing but the best going forward. And him and his brother will both be Trojans for life. And
for sure,
their production here has been great.
Yeah, and just to highlight Keely as well, like he hasn't been playing at 100%, but he has just fought through to continue to play for this defense. So props to him as well on that front. Final point from me, Cody, when talking about this defense, and I guess the game as a whole, because you alluded to it when we were talking about USC's offense finishing. USC's defense also was put in a position to finish as well. What did you see from them towards that end of the game?
Yeah, that was great to see. And we talked about it a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. And that's something that's been a common theme this entire season, the ability to finish these games. We always talk about being a couple plays away, but at some point you've got to make those 1 or 2 plays, make those couple plays. And we did in this football game on offense, on defense. There's too many times this year where we weren't playing complementary football, where the offense does a good job of going down and scoring or putting ourselves in position to win. The defense can't get that final stop, especially on some of those 4th down plays, got to have it situations. Then on the other side, the defense does a good job of getting some stops, or we have the lead and the offense hurts us by turning the football over or not putting a drive together to finish the game like we did on Saturday. So I just love that we played complementary football. Obviously, I wish we'd been doing it the entire season, but it's great to see when you can build off of that, when you can go out there and apply it and take some of those, lessons you've learned this year and go get the job done on Saturday against another team. I know this is, a 4-5 versus a 5-4, and we're not playing for the playoff, and it wasn't, going to play for the Big Ten championship, but 2 teams that have a lot to play for when it comes to getting bowl eligible, to wanting to build momentum going into the offseason, 2 coaches that are fairly new to these programs. So it was a very important game. And the fact that we got the job done, that was a great interception by Greedy Vance to win the game, to put the game away. Did you see after that interception too, he gave the ball to Jen Cohen down there in the end zone?
See, okay, I didn't catch that at the time, but the USC Athletics account tweeted like shout out Jen Cohen. And
okay, that's where I saw it too.
That happened to be when she was sitting in the background waiting for the presser, and so she saw that she was tagged, and she was like, "I've gotten so many texts about this." So I didn't actually see that, but I got to hear her reaction to it. But I thought it was funny.
No, that was cool. That was a fitting moment, and but just going that final drive outside of that play, and there's times when you watch that final drive, you get a little tense and you're worried because they are moving the football. They converted on a fourth down, but when you have those got to have it situations or the final drive when they need to score, when it's not just 3 points, when they need to score a touchdown, it's okay, and that's what Lynn was doing, playing smart. He was aggressive, but it's okay to give up some of those underneath plays. It's okay to let them drive a little bit because when they get down to the red zone, that's where you can kind of amp everything up a little bit. The field gets smaller, everything gets a little bit tighter. But if you're out early on in that drive, giving up big plays or going all out and playing with no help over the top and giving up those shots down the field, that's where they can hurt you. So it was a very good job on that drive of being bend, don't break. That's what you need in that situation. I don't need a 3 and out right away. Will we love that or a 4 and out? Yeah, that'd be great. But just don't let them score. Do whatever it takes to not let them score. Make the stop when it matters most. And we did that with a great pick by Greedy Vanson. And that was great to see. Like I said, our offense finishing, our defense finishing. Now we just got to build off of that these last 2 weeks going into these rivalry games. If it comes down to a one-score game, which I would hope it doesn't, I am so ready for a blowout win. I would love to see us, especially these next two. Let's get a comfortable lead so we're not stressing in the fourth quarter. That's been the
Yes,
story of the
please.
year. But overall, it was just great to see on both sides of the ball us be in that position like we have before, and this time being able to get the job done.
You talking about, the importance of finishing, even, at this point of the year, despite, the goals changing as the season has progressed. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's easy, at least from an outside perspective, to be like, none of this really matters, or like, what's the point? But I think from your perspective, Cody, like getting those reps, for the younger guys like Cam Fountain or Sam Green, like it's still very much important. And I feel like for the long term culture of this program, it's still important to show up on Saturdays and play like we saw on this Saturday, with that finishing mentality.
Yeah, you're always building for the future. Whether we are 9-0, 10-0, whatever we are right now, or whether we're 1-10, or we're 0-0, whatever the record is, or we're right where we're at, we're 5-5 in the middle. Whatever the record is, you are still developing players. You are still playing for that next year. Now, yes, do the rosters look completely different? And Washington, the team we played a couple weeks ago, is the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Right? They lost their entire roster from the transfer portal after they went to a national championship, and they are building that program again with a new head coach. Yes, rosters are going to change. Are all the young guys going to be here next year that are learning these lessons this year on and developing? No, that's just the truth of the matter. That happens. Before they used to, right? It was a lot more difficult to transfer. You had to
Yeah.
go to a JUCO and sit out for a year. But nowadays, it's a lot easier for some of these younger players to leave, but you're still building for the core players that are here, those younger guys. And we have a lot of them that have had to step up this year that haven't been in those positions before. It's very important for those guys to learn how to win, to learn how to get the job done, to learn how to finish. Whether it's just one game or 2 games or 3 games, you've got to have those experiences where you at least get the job done once or a couple times to lean back on, to know, okay, I know what it feels like now. I know what it takes. I know what it doesn't take too, because I've been in that position before. And I know the losing sucks and it's terrible and you don't want that to happen, but you learn a lot from those lessons and that helps you so much in the future. Now, that can't keep happening. You have to apply those lessons like we did on Saturday and going forward these last 2 games and going into the next year. Those things have to continue to trend in the right direction. It can't just be loss after loss after loss to where it's like, all right, how many lessons are we going to learn right before we start applying, getting the job done and figuring out how to finish. But yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought up Sam Green too. I forgot to mention him as one of the younger players.
Yeah.
Talking about this Stephen Line, another guy that's been great and developing well. But yeah, that is so important for the core group on this football team. And talking about the transfer players that we get and the Arnold brothers and the guys we've talked about, that's a big testament to Coach Riley as well. He is getting guys here with great character that want to be here, that have great values, that know the standard is the standard, guys that are leaders, guys that are we firsters and not me firsters, and they'll put their body on the line for their team. But they're learning so much this year, and like I said, it's great to get the win and to be able to finish one of these games. But it can't just be, okay, we did it once, it's done now. We've got to be able to build off of that, especially for this young group in the last 2 games and also going into 2025.
Alrighty, Cody, I want to jump into questions before we do. Just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody Kessler.
Fight on.
Boom.
And we got no what?
Oh my gosh. There
Oh
is no
no.
emoji reaction
Is it? Oh
for
wait, here we go.
our audio listeners.
Oh, there we go.
Wow.
Okay, confetti. We got to get
I
a
didn't
victory
see it.
confetti. There it is.
I didn't see
It
it.
didn't happen.
No. That's
Oh no.
crazy.
Okay, well, for everyone who's our audio listeners, we have the photo booth setting is on my laptop, so every time I do a fight on, it does confetti. Did it do it that time?
Nope, didn't see it.
It's doing it on mine. All right, anyways, we'll just imagine
Yes,
there's a victory confetti.
there you go. The one time we can use the confetti, we can't.
I
So,
know.
oh
Just
well.
let me down there right there. It made me look bad. All right, here we go.
We got a question from G who said, Cody, what did we learn about Jayden? He has 2 big games coming up.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is development. We've talked about before. We've seen how high his ceiling is. He's shown that he has a great arm. He's shown that he has that athletic, playmaking ability, that he can make those big time hero plays, that he can be Superman, that he can push the football down the field, that he can make those, far hash to sideline throws, that he can take off and run and hurt you with his feet. It's just being able to be smart with the football. Like I said, between the years, taking that next step when it comes to running an offense, to protecting the team, to not turning the football over, not putting the ball in harm's way. And he's got to be able to show improvement over these next 2 games to state his case of being the quarterback of the future for USC.
Sit Tight said it was shaky at first, but with a very balanced attack, this is the Lincoln Riley offense we've been waiting for. Do you think Lincoln Riley waited too long to make a change at quarterback?
That's a tough one. And I'll kind of just reiterate what I said last week and I'll start off by saying again, was Miller the problem or was Miller the reason we were losing these games? Absolutely not. And Coach Riley will say that. And there's, when you're a team, it's not just one guy, right? And that's not what this quarterback change was about, was putting the blame on Miller, saying, okay, Miller was a problem. Jayden's in, now everything's fixed. Absolutely not, right? It's a team effort. There's a lot of things that are happening, but I think things that Miller was doing started to become too consistent. That's why the quarterback change happened at this time, right? What I talked about, we were 1-4 in the last 5 games. During that stretch, Miller had 7 interceptions. Didn't have a turnover problem early on in the season, but that's starting to become consistent, right? The run game a little bit, although it was productive, just he wasn't a big factor in the run game, especially with some of those zone read plays where he had an opportunity to pull the football. That started to hurt us a little bit. Some of those tackles for loss against Maryland and some of those games when it's close like that, not being able to pull the football and take off and hurt you with his legs, something that Jayden adds to this offense a little bit. And the other thing for me was just, and I think this was one of the most important things, and it wasn't great on Saturday. It wasn't like everything was fixed. I think it continued to get better, but we did see some of those explosive plays, just the ability to push the football down the field. I think that was the biggest thing that wasn't really hurting us early on in the season, right? We started out 3-1. So when you're 3-1, you're not going to make a decision if you go 3-3 or flirting with that 500 area right away because you've won 3, you've lost 3, you're still a young player, not young in the terms of how long he's been in college, but in the terms of starting. And I'm talking about Miller of having experience. So he's going to let him work through that. But when those issues that I just talked about started to become consistent, that's when the quarterback change had to be made. And Coach Riley talked about, we tried different things. We tried different things on offense, the last thing or one of the things that we didn't try yet was getting a spark from a quarterback change. And it's not like we're the first place to ever do this. This happens. That's the reality of the business. Do you feel for Miller, right? Is it a frustrating time for Miller who wanted to be the guy who committed to USC and stuck here through the tough times and through the transfer portal era and all these things when he had to sit and wait his turn? Absolutely. It just didn't work out. And that's unfortunate, but that happens everywhere. There's a lot of places where that happens, and then Jayden comes in. You want him to be the guy and build that spark, right? And that was great to see. And is it all said and done? Is he the savior at quarterback and the next guy is going to be no, he has a long way to go and he'll tell you that himself. I've got to get better. And he said that in the post-game press conference. It was comfortable, getting out there and being able to show some productivity and do some things well, but I've got to clean up some of those mistakes and get better. And that's going to come with experience and development. So there's two sides of it, right? And with the question or back to the original question of did he wait too long? I don't think so. Like I said, Miller was still a younger quarterback when it came to experience. You want to allow him to work through that, especially if it's going to help him in the future, if he is the guy. But when the problems started to become too consistent, specifically the turnover issue and not pushing the football down the field enough or not hitting some of those plays when our receivers had a step on a defender and getting behind the defense, those really start to hurt you. And those lead to not necessarily being the reason we lost, but they play a major role in winning and losing football games.
We got a question from Kelsey who said, would we have had the same outcome if Riley had called as many running plays with Miller at QB? Why did he wait to play the run game until Maiava was at quarterback instead of any time earlier this season, she says.
Regardless of who's at quarterback, we have to be balanced on offense, right? And there's times in Coach Riley's career, if you go back and watch his film, absolutely. And last year, there's times when you have to get in those shootouts and throw it 50, 60 plus. But the problem for me is that we were throwing it 50 times in a game we didn't have to. We were throwing it 50 times in a game where we had a lead, right? When we have a very good back and Woody Marks, who was averaging over 5 yards per carry in some of these games. When you have Quentin Joyner, who hasn't had a negative rush the entire season. When you have guys like that and our offensive line, like we talked about, that was struggling early on, they were being so productive in the run game. I just wish we would have been a little bit more balanced in some of these games earlier on, especially when we had the lead in the second half, right? When you go back to the Maryland game, That's a game that always sticks out in my head. We threw it 50 times. Maryland threw it 50 times. We ran it 24. They ran it 24. We had a 2-touchdown lead in the second half. We should have been around balanced. Then you go to the Rutgers games the following week. We throw it 28, we run it 23, or somewhere around there, right around 50-50. We see the productivity we have. In this game, we throw it 35, we run it 31. Wasn't great, but we saw productivity on offense to where when we have a balanced attack, it's so much more difficult for opposing defenses to cover. So I say all that to say it doesn't matter who's in at quarterback, whether it's Jayden, whether it's Miller, whether it's someone else that's on the roster, Jake Jensen, anyone else. I just truly believe, especially when you have an MVP back like Woody Marks in the backfield, we've got to stay around balance, stay 50-50. There are some games where it's going to be a shootout, fine. But when we have the lead or we're playing a game that is close, like it's been the entire year, I just love for us to stick to the run game and be a lot more consistent and a lot more balanced.
Couple more questions, Cody. Jonathan said, and I know we talked about this, but he said, how do we fix our field goal protection?
Just more reps, just attention to detail. There's no secret formula, right? It's you got to step down, punch out, right? On that play right there, we didn't punch out. Sierra Wright, who again, former USC player, made a big play in that game, but he just happened to be the guy coming off the edge. We did a good job of blocking inside, but you just got to get more of a piece of that guy when you punch out. I was a holder for a while, so I take special teams a little bit more near and dear to my heart when I was holding my sophomore year. So I was in a lot of special teams meetings with John Baxter, but yeah, that's unacceptable. But there's really no secret formula to that. There's nothing you can do, I guess, better or get better guys. You just got to be better with your attention to detail. And when it comes to execution, you got to make sure everyone's doing their job. But like I said, that cannot happen. We cannot have another issue this year going forward to where we have a chip shot field goal or an opportunity to extend the lead and it gets blocked and brings the other team right back into the game and we lose all momentum. So whatever they need to do at practice, they need to get done, especially going forward and spend a little bit more time in that area.
Final question comes from Smiles and AZ, but I'm going to make it a two-parter. First part, how important are bowl game reps or practices, I should say, Cody?
Yeah, those are very important. And that was, something for me my sophomore year when we knew Matt Barkley was leaving and me and Whittick were going to compete the next year. I knew he was playing in the bowl game, but I treated that almost as if it was an extended spring ball or extended fall camp to where I went out and competed in those couple of weeks because you go back to ones versus ones and twos versus twos. So I say that to say some of these younger guys who are competing for a spot next year, who want to, go from that second or third string spot to becoming a starter, that starts now. It doesn't start in summer and spring ball and fall camp and all of that. It'll carry on into that, but that starts in bowl prep. That starts in preparation for next year, especially when you're not playing in the playoffs. Some of these older guys may sit out and get healthy for, the combine, the draft, and all of those things. Some of these younger guys are getting an opportunity to play and put some things on tapes, playing in meaningful snaps, which they haven't done before. But yeah, the competition level or the competition aspects of things start in those bowl game prep because you get a couple of weeks before that bowl game starts. And obviously I know finals and all that take away from a little bit of that time, but those practices you have to treat as a fall camp, especially if you're a younger player competing to be a playmaker here in the future or have a bigger role going into next year and you want to stay here and you're not transferring. So yeah, that's a great question. Those are very important. Like I said, I flash back, we're playing that year, I think, in the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. And we knew obviously it wasn't a big bowl game, but I treated that as a week to compete with me and Max Whittick, who I knew was starting, but I allowed myself to go out there and compete a little bit to carry over into the next season. I ended up winning the job. And a big part of that was my preparation in that bowl week and being able, to get a jump start on that competition.
Now, the next question, final question, I should say, Smiles wanted to know what's the best possible bowl USC could go to. And part of me just wants to pump the brakes until we know that for sure, because it could be 6 games, it could be 7 games. We don't know. But I'm not up to date with my bowlology at this point when it comes to USC,
yes.
Cody.
Well, same too, and the conference changing. If it was Pac-12 last year, then we'd obviously have an idea of what it would be because we've seen records like that before and what they may be. But I have no idea. That's a great question. So Smiles, we'll get back to you on that one. Smiles and AZ. Sorry, I don't want to leave that out, but we will get back to you on that. But with that being said, was that the final question?
Yeah, wrap it up, Cody. Go for it.
I'm going to wrap it up. Keely's got to get going. They've got a men's basketball game tonight against Cal. She's now covering men's, women's basketball, and she's still finding time to do the Victory podcast with football and everything. So huge shout out to you. It's been amazing. Then you got to edit all this and all of that. But,
I know.
Well, people who get frustrated, I know I give you a hard time being sick and all that, but everything you do behind the scenes, obviously our listeners are very appreciative of that. But go watch the basketball if you guys can tune in tonight. Support men's basketball, women's basketball. They're off to a great start. Let's finish this season strong. From this point forward, everyone listening, we are locked in. It is UCLA week. We know what that means. I don't want any smiles all week. everybody, if you see a Bruin fan, if they're a family member, anybody like that, we'll talk to them next week, and then we'll block out all the Notre Dame fans during that week. So these last 2 weeks are very important, but it was great to get a win. Let's keep that momentum going. We get to go play in the Rose Bowl next week. So it doesn't matter what the record is. You got to get excited and get ready for this one.
Yeah, that being said, stay tuned for our preview episode. It's going to be a fun one. You can tell Cody always brings the heat for UCLA week, so it'll be a fun one for sure. But that's going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for listening to our recap episode. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.